Welcome, everyone. Eagles insider Dave Spadaro here, along with the Hall of Famer Brian Westbrook. It's our self-scout presented by Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged, and we're here to talk about Sunday's offensive performance in a 20-14 loss to the New Orleans Saints. Season over for the Eagles. Before we get into the self-scout, Brian, some words on what the Eagles showed you this season.
Well, I think you showed a lot. Obviously, you start the season early, a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. You lose a couple games. But there are points in this season where Doug's team could have quit. There's points in this season, you talk about Week 11 versus the Saints getting blown out on national TV, where the team could have just went into a shell and said, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not the same team. This team continued to fight through injury, continued to fight through losing quarterbacks, losing important players on your team to win football games. They competed all season long. To win 6 of your last 8 games, that was impressive. This team certainly showed the heart of Philadelphia, heart and soul of what the old teams used to have. What the old team said, we pride ourselves on showing heart and willpower, strength every single opportunity. This team showed that, and I think we should be proud for some of those types of things.
They showed the heart of a champion, and they battled all season. They battled on Sunday in New Orleans, and they started the game in absolutely perfect fashion offensively, putting together, I thought, really an excellent mix of the run, the pass, and the run maybe not been super successful, but it made the Saints respect the run game. And then Nick Foles came out 8 for 8, his first 8 passes. He was 5 of 5 on the first touchdown. A beautiful throw to Jordan Matthews. Brian, I thought the Eagles' offensive game plan in that first quarter was absolute perfection.
The one thing that you had was balance, just like you mentioned, run pass. You had the Saints defense on their heels. They didn't know what was coming next. They had no clue whether it was going to be a run, whether it was going to be a short pass, whether it was going to be a long pass down the field. Nick Foles was completing his footballs down the field. Our offense looked great. We had 2 drives over 70 yards. That was impressive. That's the way that you want to start a game. 14 points in that first quarter. Very good for our offense.
And then everything changed on one play. Early second quarter, the third snap of that quarter. Looking down the left sideline for Zach Ertz, who had a step on cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. Unfortunately, the pass just a little bit underthrown, and Lattimore made a great play to go up and high-point it for the interception. And from that point on, Brian, the offense did nothing.
Well, this is what happened to the offense. We talked about the balance early, the ability to run pass, keeping the defense, on their heels. Our offense wasn't able to run the football anymore. We think we gave up on the run a little bit prematurely just because we weren't having a lot of success. And Nick Foles, you talk about a quarterback that has done so much for this organization, Super Bowl MVP. He just wasn't the same guy as he was in that first quarter before the interceptions. He looked reluctant to throw the football down the field. He looked a little timid. He wasn't as sure to throw the ball down the field. And when you don't have a run game, you lose a couple guys in your offensive line, and you have a quarterback that's not as confident throwing the ball down the field, that bodes bad for your offense.
Yeah, the offensive loss of right guard Brandon Brooks was huge. Torn Achilles tendon in that first quarter, and what a huge blow. No offense to Steven Wisniewski, but you're losing a big, powerful road grader, perfect complement.
Your best
Lane
run
Johnson.
blocker.
Yeah, so that was a big loss. And then the Eagles just unable to sustain drives, and the Saints offense stayed on the field the entire third quarter. A tough look for the Eagles. Brian, let's talk about the change in momentum. We saw it last year in the NFC Championship game against the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota comes down, scores first, has some momentum. Patrick Robinson with the interception, returns it for a touchdown. Everything changes. Why is that? Why is it such a dramatic change in momentum we see?
Well, I think every team is looking for that swing. And I think coming out of the tunnel at the beginning of the football game, we were looking for that swing. We got it the very first play of the game, interception, and now the ball is moving for us. The momentum is moving downhill for us as we attack and we go out there and we score early. The next possession, we score again. Now the momentum is moving in the right direction. The Saints are on their heels. If Nick Foles gets that ball up, and I'm talking about a little bit further, 5 yards further than he threw the ball to Zach Ertz. At that point, now we're going in to score. At least we're getting 3 points. It's a totally different game. And the way that you call the game as an offensive play caller is different. The way that you play the game, you're not as tight as an actual player on the field, is totally different. Things change in the instant. A single play changed the course of this football game.
And a single play late in the game cemented the loss for the Eagles. Foles to Alshon Jeffrey, a pass that he catches, as Zach Ertz said, 999,999 times out of 1 million. In this instant, though, he dropped it. And you feel a lot of compassion for Alshon, who catches everything, who was instrumental, of course, in the Super Bowl victory, a big part of the offense this year. Eagles really missed him the opening 3 games. And it's a play that it's just human error.
It's one of those things. And Alshon, all-pro type of player, he continues to be a big weapon for our offense. And when he came back, our offense looked totally different with Nick Foles in there and Alshon being able to throw the ball deep. Our offense looked great. But you're right. Sometimes these types of things happen in a football game, end of the game situation. Alshon has to make the catch. Unfortunately, he didn't.
What did you think, Brian, of running that play before the 2-minute warning? The Eagles kind of rushed it up there at 2:01. The snap came. A little interesting choice there with 2 timeouts late in the game in Saints territory.
Well, a couple of different things. As you're thinking, you're driving down the field. You have over 2 minutes left in the football game, and you're saying, okay, we need to score. We know that, and we're moving the football well, but we also don't want to leave any time on the clock for Drew Brees and that offense. And so for me, I would have waited until after the 2-minute warning to run that football play, because you're right. We still had 2 timeouts. We still had the ability to run the ball. But if you're a team with momentum, haven't done very much throughout the last 3 quarters of the game, now you're saying we have some momentum. We don't want to stop it. We don't want to allow the defense to regroup and come back together after the 2-minute warning. So you rush up there to the line of scrimmage. And I don't think that's the reason why Alshon dropped the football or anything like that. But in hindsight, obviously Monday morning quarterback in here, you're saying, okay, let's wait till the 2-minute. Let's regroup ourselves, collect ourselves, and go out there and run the best play possible. And who's to know? Who's to know? That same thing could have happened after the 2-minute. Yeah. But, I think in hindsight, of course, you want to say, allow the time to go down to 2 minutes, take the time out, and at that point, you're seeing yourself as an offense, as a unit. Now we have 30, 45 yards left. Let's go out there and score.
So the offense on Sunday, a perfect first quarter and then 3 quarters of struggles. That adds up to a 20-14 loss that ends the Eagles season. Brian, as you look forward to 2019, a lot of questions about this offense. What kind of questions do you have as the Eagles go into an offseason where they're going to have to make a lot of very difficult decisions?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Carson Wentz has to get healthy. He has to get totally healthy, his back, knee, whatever else is ailing him, he has to get completely healthy. And now, this is the most important offseason for him. He has to not only get healthy, he has to become a better quarterback, learn how to do things a little bit better in the pocket, get more people involved, go through his progression a little bit better. That's going to go a long way to helping this team next year. Then you have to look at the offensive line. A lot of injuries, guys battled. Jason Peters battled all season long. Obviously, Brandon Brooks coming off the Achilles is going to be a huge deal as the offseason, because it's going to be hard for him to be ready to start the season. So you're going to have to address that in some way. You also have to find out who is going to be your starting running back, who's going to be a guy that you can depend on for 20, 25 carries every single game. To me, that's probably something that you have to fill throughout the draft. And then you look at the wide receiver position. You need that deep threat. You need that consistent deep threat, 50, 60 catches every single year. These are big-time issues for our offense. We have to find those answers. This offseason is going to be huge.
At running back, do you favor a go-to 3-down back, or do you want to see a little running back by committee? How would you kind of like to see the Eagles address that?
I want a 3-down back. I want a guy that we know coming into the game we're going to get 80-plus yards rushing. We're going to get 50 yards receiving. We know exactly where we're going to get from this guy every single game. The problem with the running back by committee is at one game I might get 50 yards from this guy. The next game I might get 50 yards from that guy. There's no dependability at that, and it's hard to find your identity as a team when you have 3 or 4 different guys coming in and out of the game.
It's really interesting when the NFL, you look at the 4 teams remaining, you've got franchise running backs in Los Angeles with Gurley, and he's getting some great support from C.J. Anderson. A 2-back system in New Orleans, but Kamara is your go-to running back. Sony Michel growing up for the New England Patriots.
That's right.
And then in Kansas City, they just kind of plug and play
Damon
in that
Williams,
offense.
they gave him a contract. Yeah. He's been the guy ever since Hunt has kind of went out. He's been the guy, so they gave him a 2-year contract. When you look at these teams that are still in the playoffs, you have to say a couple things. Home field advantage obviously is a must. That's huge. But you have to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage. All 4 of those teams dominated the line of scrimmage. That's part of the reason why they won.
All right, so the Eagles go down and the season is over, and we look forward to a very, very interesting offseason as the team gets ready for 2019. We thank you for joining us here on Self Scout, presented by Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Brian Westbrook, Dave Spadaro, thanks so much for joining us.